everyone. This is Mike from the AuthAnvil team here. Thank you for coming out to our webinar today. We've got a lot of great stuff to show you, and we really hope you're going to like it. So just a quick housekeeping item. I'm going to be manning the question pane. We've got the Q&A module enabled. So if you have any questions during the webinar, simply type them in there and I'll address them as we can, or we'll address them at the end to the entire audience. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Julian Scott. He is the product manager for AuthAnvil, and he will be taking you through today's presentation. Julian.
Thank you very much, Mike, and welcome to everybody that's joined us today. We have a very large audience, which is fantastic, and I appreciate everybody's time and attention. For those, some of you may have been receiving over the last couple of weeks a couple of kind of teaser emails about our announcements. Certainly anybody that joined us last week at Connect or might have seen the recent press release that followed will be aware that we're very happy to announce that AuthAnvil has released AuthAnvil On Demand, which is our first true cloud-based application. And so the purpose of today's presentation is to kind of take you through some of the particulars around, why we did it, what it looks like, the pricing, the strategy, etc. And as Mike said, hopefully take some questions towards the end of the presentation, and obviously even give you a quick demo of the product. We're very proud of what we've achieved, and we hope you will like it too. So first things first, in terms of why AuthAnvil On Demand, well, when we were purchased by Kaseya a couple of, almost 2 years ago now, we had various objectives in mind. The first of which we realized the existing AuthAnvil On-Prem, which many of you use and many of you looked at in the past, didn't really scale. It certainly it was originally architected around the needs of managed service providers, and certainly still is. But one of the growing opportunities for managed service providers in general, and certainly even if you look at enterprises in particular, is the opportunity to monetize by offering up identity and access as a service. And AuthAnvil On-Prem, while it certainly supports a multi-tenant environment and gives you that opportunity to resell their services, one of the challenges has always been that it could be somewhat challenging at times to set up, and certainly the multi-tenancy capabilities, the ability to manage accounts within AuthAnvil On-Prem were somewhat challenging. Also too, as I mentioned, there was some issues around scale and scalability, and so we have now developed as I said, from the bottom up over the last year and a half, we've developed AuthAnvil On Demand, which is running on Microsoft's Azure data centers, and that gives us a lot of flexibility on a global basis for how we can spin up pods geographically and enable you and your customers to meet your various security and compliance requirements, and also obviously support your concerns around availability and it being elastically scalable. It allows us to make sure that that instant on, always on capability. So the general architecture is fairly straightforward. There's only so many ways you can show an on-demand sort of delivery model, but this kind of gives you just a very high-level view of what it looks like. But what we're particularly proud of is the work that we've done around the whole token experience. Many of you have used our existing AuthAnvil apps in the past, the one-time password application. But the market's changed, and the market's changed in many different ways. There are a lot of different vendors out there that have moved into this market, and that whole experience in terms of what that end user is expecting to go through is different than what it used to be. And so we've looked around, we've seen looked very closely at what some of our competitors are doing in the space, and again the importance of ensuring that not only from your own internal use perspective, but especially if you're now looking to offer this as a service to your clients. And again, if you're an enterprise that's now dealing with potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of end users, we have to be very focused on what that experience is, because that's going to have a huge determining factor, I should say, in terms of how easy it's going to be to deploy, how it's embraced throughout the organization to enable you to meet your security needs. So we've introduced a new Authenticator app, which is unique to AuthAnvil On Demand. Obviously, it has a different look and feel to it. So we still support our traditional one-time passwords, which I think everybody's pretty used to and fairly standard experience. But now we have the ability to support multiple accounts, even from third parties. And so this added flexibility is all around, again, ensuring that user onboarding experience and that user experience from beginning to end gives them that flexibility in terms of their they now have multiple accounts that they may need to use to authenticate with. Big initiative for us was around the whole supporting now push authentication. And that's been kind of one of those, we've had lots of questions over the years as to, why do we not do push? When are we going to do push? Push is now here. And that whole experience is one that, again, is a game changer in terms of our ability to offer a better experience to you as our customers, and as importantly, your ability now to offer this up as an experience from an IDaaS perspective to your end users. And so, if anybody's familiar with a Duo security type of offering, you'll kind of see that it looks, somewhat familiar in terms of, recognizing the individual themselves, where they authenticating from. What time is it, what date is it? All this information is being now captured in logs, and then that easy deny or approve is really critical in terms of giving your users something that they're comfortable using, and also gives them that ease of use that most of these organizations in this space are able to provide. As I said, we're very much focused on the Duo experience, and it's something that we've been able to emulate quite satisfactorily. One of the cool things about the app now is that anybody that's used the OTP in the past, you've always had that experience of having to go and unlock your phone. That kind of adds another layer, and then oftentimes we would hear people pushing back around, I have to unlock my phone, it's difficult to do, it takes time. Now with the new push authentication, you can actually accept the request without even needing to unlock the home screen. All you would simply do is you get the request as it appears here, swipe it over to from left to right, from right to left, and you can either, again, approve or deny that request. A very simple process that makes it easier for users to authenticate using 2FA. We currently support iPhone and Android. We also have a Windows desktop version. Works currently on Windows 10. We are in the process of backporting it to support Windows 8.1, and we are working on the Windows Phone application. So if anybody does go to one of the app stores, you will see there's a new AuthAnvil Authenticator app currently available. So one of the cool things that we've introduced is something called the Kaseya Universal Directory, and that gives you now the ability to basically have full directory synchronization and full control over all of your AD profiles and users, all managed from within the Kaseya Universal Directory. And why this is important is for any of you out there that are currently using an existing Kaseya product, or maybe looking over time to increase your the portfolio of our products that you're using, this is going to give you now the ability to manage all of those users from within the Kaseya Universal Directory, and manage those users across all of the various Kaseya products that you're now managing. For those of you that are looking to offer this up to your clientele, it would allow you then to manage and store all of the AD credentials for all of your client organizations, all within the Kaseya Universal Directory. And that gives you that full kind of centralized cloud-based control and management of all of those creds, that again, it makes it a lot easier for you to manage it, whether it's within the Kaseya stack, or even externally through anything else that requires AD credentials. So again, as I said, synchronizing all your users, groups, and computers is defined by the admin, and populating Universal Directory gives you a lot more flexibility. And again, we're the only product in this space that offers that Universal Directory capability. From a synchronization perspective, we've tested this across tens of thousands of users in terms of the ability to sync up that data very quick. And if anybody's kind of tried doing that with other services, it can take some time. And so again, in terms of your ability to get up and running quickly and support your customers in terms of having to import large quantities of credentials, we've done some extensive testing, and it's extremely quick to be able to set up those organizational units and then start to provision users according to your policies. So as I said at the beginning, one of the focuses has been on that onboarding experience. And again, it's one thing when you're setting up a product like AuthAnvil internally, when you've only got a limited subset of users. In many cases, our typical MSP would be using it maybe for 5 or 10, 15, 20 techs. But when you're now starting to look in terms of potentially hundreds, if not thousands of users, when you look across your entire client base, that onboarding experience has to be exceptional. And we've taken a philosophy that the end user in this case is not an IT person. The end user in this case is somebody in sales or admin or marketing or finance or whatnot that may not be as tech savvy as many of us are, but they need to go through a fairly simple, straightforward experience so that they have that, that your IT support is not all of a sudden overwhelmed when you look at a large scale deployment for people that are unable to make any headway and running into problems with it. So once that user is provisioned, they receive a welcome email, and it basically looks exactly like this. It talks to them by name and basically leads them through a 3-step process to get their token set up. So it takes that whole burden away from your IT group to actually do the onboarding. That's now automated through the onboarding process. So very simply, they would get this email. Go through the process like many of our competitors do, which is all about ease of use, and then they would just go to set up their device, or they go to the App Store, download whichever app they need, whether they're using Android or iOS. Again, soon we'll be adding Windows Phone. Windows Desktop is currently available, and basically all they're doing is downloading the app to their device, enabling the camera, and pointing at the QR code that's presented. And that's all they need to do. And then it's automatically going to provision that user and get them set up to start using two-factor authentication. So we have what's called the universal signing component. So basically that allows, and again, you're going to see when I show you the demo, the whole look and feel of AuthAnvil is different. And we're going now with this kind of single polymer web fabric, which anybody that's familiar with Google is going to feel very comfortable using the solution. Any of those millennials that you're looking to hire into your organizations that are used to using sort of Google applications are going to feel right at home. And you're going to actually start to see this design theme throughout the rest of the Kaseya product line. So you're going to start to see, feel a lot more familiar with all of the products, but certainly when we look at AuthAnvil on Demand, we're certainly very happy with how it's turned out. And we think, again, it's very intuitive design, and it's going to be very easy for users to learn and feel comfortable in the product. So dynamic multi-factor authentication basically means that in the past we could only do the one-time password. Now your users have a choice of authentication. Push authentication, as we've just talked about, and I'll show you in a second, the one-time password, and then we now support the U2F tokens. So anybody that's familiar with those, universal second factor, again, gives a lot more flexibility for how users can authenticate. And so the fact that this is an extendable MFA engine means that we can support different authentication mechanisms, and quite frankly, we've actually even plumbed it in on the back end that over time we'll be able to expand into supporting things like biometrics and smart cards and other form factors if and when they come along. So the overall engine behind it is a lot more flexible. And again, it's all focused on ensuring that we can be dynamic. We can change as the industry changes, and it will continue to change. Obviously, biometrics are starting to come fast and furious. There have been requirements or needs in the past for the ability to support smart cards, and so again, we've taken the existing technology and moved it into another dimension in terms of our ability now to offer dynamic multi-factor authentication. Single sign-on is as important as ever, and I think for a lot of our current customers, it's something that you're now starting to discover and hopefully see more interest from your customers. If we look at the opportunity around identity and access as a service, and I think anybody that's heard one of my previous presentations will know that we're kind of very focused on the ability for you to now offer single sign-on to your customer base. What's driving single sign-on is obviously the adoption of cloud-based applications, and we're seeing, whether you're looking at just, Office 365 as being a key driver of that, large organizations that have Salesforce deployments, Google Apps, etc. The need for single sign-on is accelerating, and when you look at the success of organizations, companies like Okta, they've been very successful, primarily just selling the benefits of single sign-on. And so obviously, as we have with AuthAnvil on-prem, we still continue to support single sign-on and make it a lot easier for you as an administrator to manage throughout your entire organization and start to share that experience as you're starting to sell this, offer this up as identity and access as a service opportunity. So we fully support industry standards for single sign-on like SAML. Security Assertion Markup Language is, as it says, basically an industry standard, and a lot of applications that are available out there, cloud-based applications, will support that kind of out of the box, so to speak, so they're very easy to set up and configure. We have a catalog of many of the most popular web applications that are used today. Now, full disclosure, that catalog is continuing to be built out. Certainly, AuthAnvil On Demand does not currently offer the full breadth of our existing on-prem catalog, but we have apps already set up in there that are kind of meeting the needs of a lot of our MSP customers and MME type customers, and we'll be continuing to bring the existing on-prem catalog into AuthAnvil On Demand over the weeks and months ahead. So one of the cool things about this, and I'll show you this in a second, is when the ability for you to easily provision access by security group. So again, leveraging, as I said at the beginning, the opportunity around managing all of your users and all of your credentials within the Universal Directory gives any of those individuals instant access to apps through their existing group memberships. And again, it's something that's very now easy for you to determine based on security groups and roles as to what access you want to give different users to different applications in each of those organizations, be they client organizations that you're managing or within your own organization. And again, you'll see that this common look and feel is the same regardless of which screen we're looking at, whether we're looking at single sign-on or whether we're looking at administrator screens, etc. It all has that same common sort of Google look and feel, if you will. Some of you may be asking, how does this change support for some of the existing legacy applications and integrations that we have? Obviously, a lot of you are using AuthAnvil on-prem to protect your access to Kaseya and LabTech Continuum, same thing on the professional services automation side with ConnectWise and Autotask. Those all remain. We still continue to support those through AuthAnvil On Demand. So if you're an existing on-prem customer and you're looking to move over time, then you don't have to worry about losing any of those integrations. We continue to support those. We still continue to support, basically we've always said anything that supports or speaks the Radius protocol. So you will be able to use AuthAnvil On Demand to protect all of your firewalls and routers, VPNs, etc. And then the ability to sign into those web apps like WordPress and OA. So again, you've still got that full legacy support, not losing out on any of the functionality. And one of the things that's going to be very important, continues to be important, is obviously our ability to consolidate all of the logs and all of the information that we collect in AuthAnvil and present that to you in a way that is going to enable you, whether you're starting to look at developing your own audit reporting capabilities within your organization for your customers, or maybe you've been impacted by the requirement to or being audited by one of your customers, or by maybe an agency. If you're somebody listening to us that may be in the healthcare space, or somebody that may be listening to us that's impacted by PCI DSS compliancy. As you're well aware, there are times when you're going to be audited, and you need to be able to have the ability to provide all that full, detailed auditing information, and that's all collected within AuthAnvil On Demand. So we have deep inspection and reporting on all access requests, and those are all tracked and logged. And again, we can add additional functionality in and around starting to track and audit against, location of where that request is coming in, and different sessions, etc. For who did what, when, and where. So let's take a quick look at this solution, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the pricing. I think we're kind of moving along fairly quickly, but let me just quickly change screens with me, and if you can bear with me for a second. So this is actually a sales demo server that I have set up, and this is kind of how it would look for somebody that was looking to log into AuthAnvil On Demand. And I've got a couple of accounts set up here, so I'm just going to sort of click on, as I would any user, one of my identities, and it's this one, Kaseya Sales Demo. So if I click on that, I put in my password and sign in. And you'll see that I'm now being prompted, and in my case I have two different options. I have not set up a U2F, so that was one of the other ones. I hadn't set up my Windows login or Windows desktop, but here I'm being prompted for the push authentication. And so unfortunately what you can't see is when I press on this, I'm actually going to get a notification on my phone. And if you remember what I said before, is I'm actually not even needing to unlock my phone to be able to accept the push request. So it's going to come through to my phone, and you may have heard it just beep or ping. I'll slide that over and I'll accept, and you'll see that I'm now logged in. And that was it. That was as easy as it can be for an end user. And what you're seeing here is actually what, in many cases, a typical end user might see. So if in a scenario whereby you're deploying AuthAnvil on demand, and in that organization, most of the end users may typically only be required to use it or allowed to use it for accessing single sign-on. Well, this is an example of what that user is being presented with. They get to what's called their launchpad. And basically their launchpad includes for them any approved single sign-on applications, and that user then could simply click on any of these applications or tablets, if you will, however you want to refer to them, to access that application. So very easy, very straightforward, saves a lot of time, saves the need for users to even know what the password is or was to be able to access these applications, and again, all managed and controlled at the administrator level. But I have different permissions, so I'm actually not just an end user, but I also have the ability as an administrator to basically administer this experience as any of you would, if you're that are going to typically be in that sort of role, if you will. So when you first log into AuthAnvil on Demand as an administrator, one of the things that we do, and again, this is all very focused on making sure that your whole experience is exceptional. And if we're totally honest with ourselves, AuthAnvil on-prem, if you remember, for those that will have purchased it in the past, typically required you to actually purchase a couple of hours of pro services just for us to help you get it set up and configured. It's a very robust product, a very solid product, but at the end of the day, it sometimes was a bit of a challenge to get up and running, and that's why we typically required that part of your purchase required a minimum 2 hours of pro services. In some cases, depending on what you were doing with it, maybe deploying the Cassé add-in at the time, it actually required additional hours. Basically, as you would expect, with a cloud-based application, it's instant on capability. And one of the advantages, obviously, is that we've kind of cut down on that whole onboarding time that should allow you to get up and running as quickly as possible. So in this case, when you first log in as an administrator, we're going to take you to this Getting Started page. And basically what we've done is put down, listed out, configured some basic tasks, if you will, that anybody that is in a administrator type role that wants to learn about AuthAnvil should want to go through. And so here, and you can see that we manage it with little check marks just so you can see how you're progressing against it. But it basically walks you through the process of start with the basics, setting up MFA for yourself as the administrator, starting to customize your portal appearance, do the branding, etc. So, for example, if we want to start with managing your token, well, you as the administrator would be able to go in there and set up your token. So manage token, test your token. So in this case, you can kind of go in and set up. How do you want to set up your token? Do you want it to be an iPhone, Android, Windows Desktop, U2F? As I said, all the ones that are currently available. And what you're going to see here is because I already have my token set up, if I do try and click on this, it's actually going to give me a warning. So again, if this is the first time you're going through this process, you're not going to get that warning, but there is a checks and balances there to ensure that if somebody already has a token set up, that they're warned first, that if they take this step and set it up again, that it could end up locking them out of the account if they don't actually complete the process. We don't want to do that because I already have my token set up. But this does also, as you'll note, allow you to do it, test your own token, and also do manage your own password changes. So putting a lot more use, or at least a lot more functionality back in the user's hands. So that's kind of one example whereby, again, going through the Getting Started, you just want to be able to do basic setup MFA for you as the administrator. You might want to go in and change your customize your portal appearance. You can actually do branding, and here I've just imported the Cassé logo, so I brand it for our organization, and you can see that appearing up here. But one of the cool things about AuthAnvil on Demand, which I think it will appeal to a lot of you that are looking to offer it up as a service, is that you can now very easily add your own branding, whether that's what we call your tenant license, which is the one you would be managing as the MSP or MME, but also if you're now starting to offer it up to your customers, you can actually brand it for their organizations too, and provide that personalization, which a lot of our customers value. So very easy to brand it and give it that kind of home look and feel, if you will. Again, I could very easily delete this if I wanted to, but not going to do that because I'm happy with it showing the Kaseya logo. But if I wanted to, I could go in there and change the organization name. I can also impact the auth policy for this organization and easily upload another image. One thing to note, and we have already seen some of our evaluation customers running into this, so I will mention it now, is it's a little bit grayed out here, which it really shouldn't be. We need to make that a little bit more prominent. But if you are starting to try and upload images for branding purposes, they must be 150 by 50 pixels. So just please be aware of that. But again, we don't want to change anything here, but a very, very easy process to go through. So going back to our getting started, again, just first time signing in using MFA. Again, very easy to do. So it kind of takes you back out and then takes me back in. So again, I'll go through my sign-in process so you can kind of go through that experience. And remember, even though each of my tasks are checked off already, when you first go in, they're not going to be checked off, and you're going to be, you're going to see them all grayed out. And then each time you complete a task, it's going to check that off for you. So again, I've just authenticated again, very quick, very easily, and I'm right back into my getting started. So again, if this were not me and you were setting this up the first time, we would have basically just checked off all three of these boxes. And then continuing down that theme, now you can start setting up your organization, managing the universal directory. This assumes that you're starting to import users. So adding users is very easy to do. I've already got some users set up here. But if I want to add a user, I can do that here. Configure that user for how I want them to, do I want to send them an email right away to activate their account? Do I or do I not want to require them to use multi-factor authentication during the activation? Don't want to do that. But if we want to also start looking at some, for those of you that may be looking to migrate over a large number of users, you also have the ability now to import users by just uploading or downloading, I should say, a CSV file. And again, basically all we need is the four columns being first name, last name, email address, and principal name. That's all we need, and then you can import your users from a client customer, if you will, or internally if you're looking to migrate over time into AuthAnvil on demand. We can also do some things at the user level, so we can actually see when this user, the account status. So here, most of the people on this list have activated their accounts, but here I've got one that shows as provisioned. Provision basically means that this user was invited to set up their token and self-provision, but they actually haven't gone through the process yet. One of the things to keep in mind for billing purposes, and we'll talk about billing a little bit later, is even though you can import as many users as you want into the universal directory, we only bill you on those that are considered in an active state. So even if you've created that user, which basically means you've set them up in, say, Universal Directory as a user, you haven't done anything with them, so you're not billed for them. Same thing with somebody that's provisioned. As I said, provision just basically means that user has been invited to set up their token, but they haven't actually activated it. So at the end of the day, you could have dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of different users set up across all the different organizations that you're managing, but you're only billed for the ones that are active. There's other things we can do here. Obviously, very easy to edit a user, delete a user, whatever the case may be. So we can see a little bit more. We can revoke somebody's token here, revoke their one-time password, etc. So again, a lot of that is back. Is very easy for you to manage. I can select a user here. Maybe I want to update something to do with that user. Again, update the status, so I can, if I wanted to change that user from being active maybe to disabled, maybe they left the organization, that's easy to do also from here. And again, we don't want to do anything like that right now. So just going through our list, and again, all of these, I'm not going to go through every single one of them. You can set up a second administrator, and potentially you want to create a security group. So if you want to go in and set up a group, I've got a couple of them set up here with some members in them. I've got some members from my Velocity team. I've got me as my own user, but it's very easy to, again, to set up. So I name that group. It could be test, and then add that group, and then I can now go in and set and add users to that group. So here I'm going to go, and again, I could set up single users, add them one by one, or add a group of users. So very, very easy to do, and these are my available users. I would just click on each of them and add them to that group. getting back to our getting started. Setting up single sign-on. Again, one of the things we want you to be successful with is setting up the single sign-on applications. So why don't I just click right down to the SSO manager here. And you can see I've already got some applications already set up. I can see how many users I have. Each of them are using the default authentication policy. You can even see when it was last launched. I could very easily, if I wanted to, delete one. I don't want to do that right now. But if I want to add an application, I would just find it in the catalog. Let's say I wanted to add, I don't know, OpenDNS, enable that application. Just determine, what I want the authentication policy to be. Again, I've only got a default one in here. You could have many of your own, and then add that application. And now I would determine who has permission to see that, to use that application. Just add a group to it. Maybe I want it to, this one's available to the test team. Add that, and it's done. So now if anybody was in that test group, they would now go into their Launchpad, and they would then see that it was enabled for them there. I didn't actually add it to mine, but that would be the experience. So anybody that's in that test group would now see that application added to their SSO portal. Very simple, very straightforward. I like to say if I can do it, anybody can do it. But as I said, very intuitive, and I think a lot of that is leveraged by the fact that it has that common sort of look and feel to it that most of us experience by using different Google type applications. So that's kind of all I wanted to show you, I think, in the product. I mean, we could look at other things, just policy manager. Again, we've got a default policy here in terms of how, what the methods that we require for or allow for people to authenticate. Again, this can all be managed. You can see that you can manage, trusted networks by, IP address, either require two-factor for all sign-ins from this IP address or don't. There's a lot of control. You've got your trusted networks, other networks, etc. And again, for those of you that have used AuthAnvil on-prem, a lot of this is very familiar to you, but I think the layout and the ease of navigation is a lot more intuitive. And again, I'm not going to change any of these or save any of these changes right now. Said I wasn't going to go through all this. I've got an auth manager set up here. Agents, logs. I think you can see that the breadth of information, as I said, that we've been collecting. Obviously, I've been doing an awful lot of sign-ins as I work through demos. You'll see also one of the key features is we do what's called lazy loading. So just to make it more efficient and save time, it basically, as you're scrolling, and many of you are familiar with this, it just does lazy loading. So you can continue to scroll down and it'll just continue to add. You can sort of filter it based on any of these. One thing I did want to show you before we sign out is just also the ability, again, for those that are looking to develop an identity and access as a service model, is the ability now to also set up customers within your, so here you can set up additional organizations. So this would be the whole concept of the multi-tenancy, which is enabled in what's in the premium version of the product, which is what we're looking at here. And so that ability to add an organization is very straightforward. And I've actually added a couple of them here, so you can see that I have them available in my drop-down menu. Being a guitar guy, I just, for the sake of sake of this demo, name them after guitars that I like. So I've got this organization called Gibson SG with a member called Pete Townsend, and it's as easy as it is to set up those organizations. And you can actually see that that they are branded too, if I can show that to you. So I've even branded that one. Again, very straightforward, very easy to do. Again, just having fun with it. But once you start to do your evaluations, keep in mind one of the things is we offer a 30-day evaluation, which is basically the first 30 days for free. It is a live environment, so anything you do in there, assuming that you move forward with your purchase, is actually live data. And again, that sort of prevents you from having to go through a whole trial experience, throw it all away, and then start anew. You can basically start as if you were, starting to use this to run not only your own internal needs, but also now even start to add customers, and you're not going to lose anything once you go live. So that kind of concludes our quick demo of AuthAnvil On Demand. I hope you liked what you've seen from the product. Again, I think I went through a lot of that fairly quickly, but the key to it, to keep in mind, is this getting started. And again, we really wanted to make this a great customer experience so that when you first get in there as an administrator, it kind of walks you through all of this, and we want to make you successful. And I think it certainly goes a long way towards doing that. One of the things you will note here is it even actually has a counter here to show you how many days you have left in your free evaluation. As I said, it is a 30-day evaluation. It's basically your first 30 days on us. It counts down, and I suppose if for those of you that may need a little bit more time, certainly you can ask sales for a little bit more time if you need us to extend it a little bit. Obviously, we don't want to do that ad infinitum. If we do extend it, maybe for a matter of days, maybe a week at a time. But certainly we will give you that opportunity to extend it as necessary. Hopefully, though, 30 days is enough to understand or get a really good perspective on whether this is the product for you. We hope it will be. In fact, we're sure it will be. And as I said, we just want you to get in there and try it out yourself. You can't really break anything. And as I said, have some fun with it and go through the getting started, and you'll be successful. So I'm going to flip back over now to my presentation. I've got a couple of things we want to take a look at. If you'll bear with me for a second. And so probably the question you have is, well, how is it priced? Many of you are very familiar with AuthAnvil on-prem, and the way that our pricing works now is, it's an annual contract. Basically, it works on different tiers, and you're basically allowed to add users up to that tier level, and then you may have, then you typically have to move up to the next tier and have a different contract in place. At the end of the day, it's definitely, it works, but certainly not ideal. And if I'm totally honest with myself, it's certainly not the type of pricing plan that makes it easier to add or offer up your own identity and access as a service model, because it's just not all that flexible. One of the things that we've been striving for with AuthAnvil On Demand, and when we looked at the whole pricing model, is to say, how can we make it easier? And one of the things that, obviously you've heard us talk about a lot as Kaseya over the last several months, especially with our new leadership team, is making ourselves easier to do business with. And for those of you that might have used AuthAnvil prior to the acquisition, you may remember what we would consider, some of the good old days when we actually had the monthly billing. Well, guess what? We're bringing that back. And we think that gives you a huge opportunity now to be able to have more flexibility around the whole billing model, to mitigate perhaps some concerns that some of you might have shared in the past around, well, what happens if I'm locked into a contract and I lose a customer? Because I'm very well aware that oftentimes, in fact most cases, you don't actually have contracts in place with your customers. They can leave you at any time. Well, we've taken it into consideration, and we're now back to basically a monthly billing model. So let me kind of explain how that works. There are two plans for AuthAnvil On Demand, basically a standard and a premium. We did look at three, and some of you may have actually had conversations with us over the last month or so, when we were just starting to populate AuthAnvil On Demand and talk about it a little bit more openly and ask for feedback. We did originally envision three, but we now focus, for simplicity's sake, on two. Now, what's in standard is the universal directory, which I talked about earlier, which is one of the key components and something that nobody else offers. We offer on-premise and cloud MFA and single sign-on. I think that's a key point of differentiation. Many of you that may have looked at other solutions over the last little while will typically see that MFA on its own is typically priced at about $1 per user per month on the low end. And single sign-on has typically been a higher priced premium for those that offer it. And again, not everybody offers MFA and single sign-on. We do, and we thought it would be a great opportunity for you if we actually included single sign-on in that $1 per user per month. And I think that really gives you an opportunity now to start looking at identity and access as a service, looking at your client base and looking at those that could benefit not only from MFA, but single sign-on. And you can offer tremendous value because you're not going to make them pay more to get both of those core applications. For those of you that are looking at the premium, and particularly for those that do want to offer up identity and access as a service, you are going to need some additional functionality which comes with the premium, and that includes the IDaaS enablement, which is, for all intents and purposes, that multi-tenancy capability, directory synchronization, the branding, which is not available in the standard model, and then some other features and functionality that we'll be adding by Q3 of 2016. So some advanced password management, the AD password resets, which I know for many of you is a huge opportunity within your client base, is that ability to do password resets, and the account provisioning. So there is some functionality that will be coming. And one of the great things about a cloud-based application, and where this makes us different not only from AuthAnvil on-prem, but quite frankly the rest of the Kaseya portfolio, is this is a true cloud application. It was built from the bottom up as a cloud application. What that means is we'll be adding features and functionality basically on the fly. For all intents and purposes, we follow an agile development methodology, and what that means is that every month, or perhaps every 2 months, depending, we'll be adding additional features and functionality to the product that you don't have to wait for. And so unlike our typical Kaseya cycle, which is a release every 6 months, this will be dynamic, this will be fluid, and you will be adding functionality as we go. Tremendous, tremendous opportunity. The premium product, as I said, is priced at $3 per user per month. Standard is $1 per user per month. How does that compare to others out there? Well, let's take a look. We think we're redefining value in the IDaaS market. We think we're providing you with a lot more functionality for a lot lower price. And it's kind of difficult to compare because this typical tier 2 that we're looking at here for a Duo security, certainly for Okta, that's when they start offering up single sign-on. And as I said at the beginning, and that's why I've kind of blended these, we're offering them both MFA, which is typically in this initial single tier 1, and single sign-on, which is usually covered off in tier 2 for $1 per user per month. Significant difference, significant value versus what a lot of our competition is doing. If you want the full, for instance, Okta stack, then you're paying upwards of $15. I guess they must have volume discounting, but you're up in this kind of range. And again, our functionality will be comparable, if not better, if you look at the benefits of things like Kaseya's Universal Directory for only $3 per user per month. So we are really trying to put the value and the opportunity back in your hands. Whether it's just a straightforward, simple internal deployment, you want to use AuthAnvil to protect your logins to Kaseya, your logins to your PSA solution, etc. Just increase your own security posture. That can basically be done for for $1 per user per month. If you do want to get more adventurous and looking at developing your own identity and access as a service opportunity, which, by the way, and some of you may have heard me already talk about this, is a market that's expected to be upwards of $20 billion by 2019. Then you as the what we call tenant license would need to be at $3 per user per month for your internal users, and then obviously you can charge your customers whatever they want in terms of whatever services they want to receive from you. So again, tremendous value, tremendous opportunity, and I think again we're trying to redefine value in this marketplace. So how do you get started? Well, we have, and some of you may have already seen this, as part of this, we have launched a new AuthAnvil.com website, whole new messaging. We're continuing to develop the site, continuing to change the focus, look and feel of the site, make it a lot more modern. Obviously, we for many different reasons, partly because of our focus on AuthAnvil on demand and not really been doing much with our legacy site, which is quite frankly still identified as Scorpion software. We're kind of starting to make that break now. We're going to be, it's going to be AuthAnvil.com, and I would certainly encourage any of you that haven't already, go take a look at the site. It's the easiest way to start an evaluation. We have the pricing available there. We have access to the help center. We're in the process of porting over a lot of our documentation, so it supports AuthAnvil on demand. A lot of it's already done. All of the different integrations are already up there and available for those of you that want to get started. But I would encourage you to just click on this try button. We have them scattered throughout the site, and just give it a whirl. As I said, the first 30 days are free. We will not collect any money. If you want to give us your credit card, we won't take it right now. We want you to try the product. We want you to be successful with it. You've got nothing to lose, so I encourage you to give it a try. What will happen after you click on that that try button is you'll just be taken to this very simple landing page. All we ask for is your work email information, or work email address, I should say. First name, last name, and this is key, is you really get to decide what you want that company URL to look like. Whatever it's going to be whatever company name or whatever identifier you have, .my.authanvil.com. And that's how it's going to appear. We currently have 2 opportunities for where you want that service to be hosted. We have an Azure pod spun up in the United States, and we actually have one already in Europe. For those of you in ANZ or Asia Pac that may be wondering, yes, we will do it. We can do it. It's just a matter of obviously making sure that we can cover off the cost to do that. So hopefully if we have enough customers and partners overseas, especially in ANZ, that want to get started, then we'll look at spinning up a service locally for you too. We certainly recognize there are location needs that have to be addressed. It was just a matter of we didn't want to incur the cost right away until we had that critical mass that justified it. So again, not to belabor that point, but what's going to happen is your now tenant license will be whatever that company URL is that you choose, .my.AuthAnvil.com. And then when you start to add customers, what will happen is they will then be linked to you. So if you're an MSP called acme.my.AuthAnvil.com and you add a client, that's going to be client-acme.my.AuthAnvil.com, and you add another one, it'll be client2 acme.my.AuthAnvil.com. So you've always got that link back to your organization. And that's all you would do is to start that evaluation. Very straightforward. The URLs are basically on a first come, first served basis. So it is possible, and it could happen that you maybe choose one and it's already selected. It will tell you that. It will say that URL is already used. Please choose another one. But pretty straightforward. It's the minimum amount of information, and then you can get yourself up and running. So again, as I said, first 30 days are free. The evaluation, just to clarify, and I did mention this a few slides ago, is a full production environment of AuthAnvil Premium. If at the end of those 30 days you're happy with AuthAnvil, but you want to go back, you think the premium's not for you, you're happy with the standard, then you get the ability then to select when you're entering your credit card information which version you want. So don't worry, we start you with the premium, but if it's too much for you at that time, you can always go back to the standard when you complete the purchase process. You're not locked into the premium. We just want to give you that full exposure to the premium so you can see all the benefits that exist therein. And again, as I said, that company URL is unique to your organization. So in terms of the pricing strategy, as I said, first 30 days are free. There is a minimum of 10 users, regardless of which plan you're on, standard or premium. So if you wanted to get started on a standard and perhaps only had 5 internal users in your organization, we will charge you $10 per month. But again, anything above 10 is just at $1 per user. So there is a minimum requirement, be it the standard, and as I said, the premium, same thing. If you wanted to get started, it would be a minimum of $30 per month for the tenant, and that would give you the full capabilities of the premium. And it's very important, again, just to clarify, even though you as what we call tenant license required to pay the minimum of $30 per month, your clients can be added at either standard or premium pricing. That doesn't really matter. So it's just the tenant is basically where you're getting that IDaaS enablement. Hopefully that's straightforward. But to give an example what that might look like, here's how that would work out. So again, if you are offering this up as a service, you are considered the tenant, and it would be your tenant.my.AuthAnvil.com, and let's say you had 200 licenses of premium, 10 licenses of premium, whatever it is, that minimum is 10, and then each of your clients is linked back to you based on whatever plan they want to go with. So in this case, it would be client A hyphen tenant, client B hyphen tenant, client C hyphen tenant, and you would set those up yourselves when you have the IDaaS enablement, as I showed you earlier, by setting up those unique organizations. You can manage those organizations from your tenant license, if you will. You can see all of their usage and so on and so forth. And then the billing would be based on the accumulation or total, if you will, of all of the different licenses by type. Pretty straightforward. So that brings us up to about 10 minutes left, and I think that timing works out pretty well because I'm assuming we might have a few questions along the way, but I just wanted to thank everybody for listening to me drone on for the last 50 minutes. I hope it was informative. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions. I certainly do encourage everybody to head over to AuthAnvil.com and start your own evaluation. Happy to have you, and we hope you like the product. Michael, I'll kind of stop there and allow ourselves a little bit of time for questions.
All right. Thanks, Julian. I'm just going through the questions here. I have had a ton of questions. Thank you all for being so active. Julian, Office 365 support.
Yeah, great catch. Office 365 is not currently part of the catalog. Now, the simple reason for that is it doesn't support SAML. We have to do some additional plumbing on the back end to to have it enabled as part of the SSO catalog. It clearly is a priority, and we're expecting to have that done in the next couple of months, hopefully sooner than that. But it is absolutely a priority for us because obviously we understand that from an IDaaS perspective, especially if you're going out to offer this up to your clients, probably one of the core applications that they're going to need and want is Office 365. So it is coming fairly quickly, but as I said, it required some additional back-end work that we weren't in a position to offer with the release last week. And for those that are, so just to clarify that point, for those that are that do start an evaluation or even could sign up by then, remember what I said earlier is once it's available, it'll just get added to the build and it'll appear. Now, obviously, we'll communicate that it's being added there. That's obviously certainly a big one, and that's certainly worthy of a communication out to the community. But the reality is it's that ease of being able to add it with a new build that all of a sudden it would be part of the SSO catalog.
We've had a lot of questions about basically how should people approach reselling. Obviously, a lot of people on this call are from MSPs. How should they go about selling it? Do you have any advice for how they should price it and handle that state of things?
Sure. Yeah, that's it's certainly, I understand it can be a challenge in terms of where do I start with identity and access as a service. I think it's really looking at and understanding and having that conversation with your customers. I generally see, and some of you may have heard me say this, but I generally see two camps, and sometimes it's determined by even the type and size of the organization. Some of your clients may be driven by a need or an understanding or want, if you will, for multi-factor authentication. They've heard and read, and maybe it's an influencer, an internal influencer that says, hey, we need multi-factor authentication. Now, in some cases, that may be driven by a compliance requirement. You need to look for triggers such as, and you would know this, what vertical are they in? Are they immediately impacted by things like PCI DSS compliancy, HIPAA compliancy, etc. So kind of look for those sort of triggers, and oftentimes their approach is more around, I need multi-factor authentication because I have a compliancy requirement, or I need multi-factor authentication just because I've read and heard enough and I'm concerned enough that I need to make sure that my users are who they say they are when they're accessing our critical information. The other camp tends to be more look for organizations that are, and you would know this because you're their MSP, or should know this, I would assume, that are adding cloud applications like Office 365, like Salesforce, and just one of the key drivers around the whole identity and access management space is the fact that organizations are becoming quite comfortable and embracing. I think we're kind of past that where I don't trust the cloud, I don't want my data in the cloud, etc. We're seeing this tremendous acceleration in the adoption of cloud applications, and those organizations are going to be the ones that are typically approaching this with a mindset around, I have all these cloud applications, I have all of these users, I want single sign-on, because they recognize the fact that with SSO, those users don't need to know the password. So you're kind of going to see it break out, I think, into two camps, although quite frankly, the fact that you can offer them both with our unique pricing really puts you in a position of strength in terms of being able to address both of those and say, well, by the way, here's my price. Now, our price to you, as I said, for you to offer it to your clients is $1 per user per month. How you monetize it, that's going to also fall into two camps. You're going to have some that will just add a margin to that, so it'll, you're probably not going to get all, unless you have thousands of users, which is entirely possible given your client base. You may be just doing, a margin on that. Maybe you're going to upcharge it by, we charge you $1, you charge them $2 per user per month, because that's the value. That's what they may see out there if they go and shop around. Obviously, wrapped up in all of the other services, you're managing all of their users, et cetera, that you're offering. Other MSPs are offering up a security type solution, if you will, packaging up with a bundle where MFA and or single sign-on is part of that security offering, but they're also bundling in other services. Could be audit and compliance, could be a whole slew of different things, backup, recovery, and that whole security offering you can actually charge a lot more for that. I've heard of, upwards of $20, $25 per user per month. And then obviously, the AuthAnvil piece is a line item in there that's just part of that package. As I said, we're charging you, our piece of that, and you're charging that customer for the entire package on a per user per month basis. Hopefully that kind of helps give you something to think about, but it's all about knowing your clients, knowing what they're solving for internally, knowing what their key drivers are, understanding what compliance or audit requirements they have to meet, and certainly understanding how you can package that up in terms of being a key differentiator for you as their MSP. Because guess what? If you're not thinking about it, the guy down the street is.
What is the future of the on-premise solution?
So the on-premise solution will continue to exist. I think in some respects the market's going to determine where that all goes. We anticipate that certainly any new customers to AuthAnvil will want to go on demand. We certainly expect that a lot of you listening out there that are current on-prem customers will look to move over. Obviously, it eliminates all of the infrastructure costs, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously, that the fact that we can continuously evolve and update, add features and functionality is going to be a key driver. But the reality is you've got a lot invested in on-prem. And so I think, the MSPs that I talked to have said, hey, I'm really interested in on-demand, that's really cool, but I'm just, whether it's just a matter of so many other priorities and things that they're going to take up your time over the next, weeks and months ahead, probably more like months and possibly years ahead, is going to mean that, it may take you some time to get there. So, the short-term answer is we will continue to support the on-prem products, certainly from a development perspective. We will be trying to mirror the Kaseya model, which is a release every 6 months. Will it have all of the features? Well, let's back up a second. To be very clear, on-prem currently has some features and functionality, particularly around the password management, that we have not yet built into the AuthAnvil On Demand. So there's still a lot of functionality that's not yet available in AuthAnvil On Demand, which exists in on-prem. So that's certainly going to be a focus of ours to bring the products up to at least parity, and then obviously move beyond with on-demand based on how the market evolves, if you will. But as I said, I think the market itself will predetermine how much we evolve AuthAnvil on-prem. Unfortunately, and I'll anticipate the question, things like the push token technology will not be backported, if you will, to AuthAnvil on-prem. We're just going to keep that same token experience is just unfortunately going to have to stay the same with on-prem and be certainly a little bit different with on-demand. I think that brings us, Mike, pretty much right on top of the hour. So I'll let you maybe close us off. And before Mike closes down the webinar, I just want to thank everybody for their time and attention today. Again, we know your time is valuable. We anticipate there will be lots of questions, and I look forward to speaking to all of you soon.